Assassin's Creed Shadows is remarkable in the sense that I've never seen people wanting a game to fail so hard. We've seen the game being attacked in almost every way conceivable, a lot of which is because of Ubisoft's own mistakes. But let's face it, a considerable chunk of the hate also comes from folks who are either just doing it for clout or ad revenue. So let me set the stage for this review. I rolled credits at about 50 something hours and I still have a bunch of side content left. And more importantly, I avoided every single leak and reveal that I could so I could go into the game without any preconceived notions or expectations of any kind. With that out of the way, let's start with what makes Assassin's Creed Shadows a terrific game. Right off the bat, this is the best Assassin's Creed game I've played in a long time, gameplay-wise. The combat is so polished and responsive that I honestly couldn't believe that I was playing a Ubisoft game. One of my biggest complaints with Valhalla was that the combat felt very clunky and the animations seemed disconnected. That's not a problem with Shadows at all. Animations are smooth and flow really well into different moves. Whether you're smashing your way through the enemies or sneaking around for quiet kills or just running around the world, both the characters feel really good to control. Most of my time was spent playing as Naue because she's more agile and that's the kind of gameplay I prefer. Her weapon choices include the katana, which was my favorite weapon throughout the game. It's fast, it has some solid abilities like the Godbreaker, which is really good for building status effects which can effectively break combat. Then there's the Kusarigama, which is a little slower but offers better distance and can entangle enemies. Finally, you have the Tanto, which is a knife that you can wield along with your hidden blade, kinda like a dual-wielding rogue. It's quick as hell and also enables double assassinations. Naue can also use tools like the kunai, which can help in taking out enemies at range. You also have shurikens and smoke bombs, which can all be upgraded and used with other abilities, adding a lot of variety to suit your gameplay style. Naue is the shinobi/assassin character, which means she has the eagle vision, which can help you mark enemies through walls, and a grappling hook that helps moving around much faster. She's quieter and more light-footed as well, so naturally, she's better at sneaking around and parkour too. And I can't believe I'm saying this about an Assassin's Creed game, but parkour actually feels good again, and so does stealth. You can even destroy lights and use the shadows to hide. Rain masks the sound of your movement, making infiltrations easier, and there are floorboards with springs that give your position away almost immediately. The grappling hook makes movement a lot more fun, and you can use it to break line of sight with enemies very quickly. Other than that, you can grapple to the top of castles, which makes it a lot more convenient to get to the synchronization points, and you can swing your way across trees and climb up towers pretty quick and smooth. There's still a little bit of randomness and you might find yourself vaulting off a different point than the one you intended, but in general, the movement seems faster, smoother, and much snappier. I guess that's what happens when you're playing as a dedicated assassin character, rather than playing as a Viking or a Greek warrior, cosplaying as an assassin. Yasuke, on the other hand, is like a bull in a china shop. Don't get me wrong, his controls are really good too, but compared to Naue, he's much bulkier and slower, both in general movement and parkour. There are some places that he just can't climb, he takes fall damage from relatively smaller heights, and he makes more noise, making it easier for enemies to detect him. But he can also break through doors and move crates out of the way. And he can kick enemies off the walls and hills, which is something Naue can't do. Where Yasuke really shines, however, is during combat encounters where you're outnumbered and surrounded by enemies. He takes less damage from attacks in general and can carry more healing rations. His weapons include the long katana, which is good for duels and one-on-one combat situations. It also has an ability that heals you while damaging the enemies. Then you have the Naginata and the Kanabo, both of which are better for crowd control. The Naginata catches multiple enemies in its swing and is really good for keeping distance since it's faster, but the Kunobe is the heavy hitter, capable of dealing big bonk damage and AoE smash abilities. His ranged weapons include the bow, which is good for silent attacks from a distance, and finally we have the Teppo, which is a rifle that deals more damage but will make the enemies aware of your presence from miles away. And you can really see and feel the amount of effort Ubisoft has put into bringing out the differences between both the protagonists and the gameplay. Even in the combat finishes, you can see that Naue is more refined and has a lot more finesse, while Yasuke is just straight up brutal, like something out of Mortal Kombat, which I find cool as hell. And that brings me to some more cool stuff that I loved about this game. Assassin's Creed Shadows has a revamped quest progression system and screen. It divides the objective screen into different circles by region, each of which then has the quest givers on it. Rather than a checklist, this makes it more about the NPCs who give you the quest. In a way, it also kind of blurs the lines between the main story and side quests, because some of these side quests also end up becoming part of the main story. I think this is both refreshing and an upgrade over Ubisoft's traditional quest design. The skill trees are an upgrade over Valhalla as well.
Fucking finally.
The overly intricate tree with incremental upgrades is gone and been replaced by the mastery system, where you can invest mastery points to gain skills. You gain 1 mastery point whenever you level up, and you can also get 2 to 3 mastery points from assassination targets, as well as killing the elite samurai guards around camps and castles. Now, these skills also have tiers which are locked behind knowledge levels. You can gain knowledge levels by doing small side activities like honoring shrines at a temple or finding lost pages, standard Ubisoft stuff. There are also some cooler side activities specific to each character, like Naoe can do Kujikiri, which is a meditation exercise with QTE that really puts you in a Zen mode. I personally found it very soothing and calming. Similarly, Yasuke has the kata, where he practices moves with a weapon. Honestly, I wasn't a big fan of this knowledge level system in the beginning, but I enjoyed the Kujikiri activities, so by the end it was fine. My favorite change, however, is the poison status effect. If you poison an enemy, they'll stop attacking and stand in one place, all vulnerable, throwing up while they take poison damage. This is such a cool addition. Other status effects include Bleed and Daze. Bleed deals major health damage in one shot, while Daze causes the enemy attacks to miss entirely. If you're playing as Naoe and have the Guardbreaker ability, you can pretty much lock the enemies in a dazed state and take anyone down easily, effectively breaking the game. But enough about gameplay. Let's talk about the world of Shadows. In terms of visuals, as in graphics and fidelity, Assassin's Creed Shadows has perhaps one of the best looking open worlds I've seen in a game. The map is full of large, lush fields, dense forests, bustling towns and tall peaks, all coming together to create a world that feels full of life. And a lot of it, in my opinion, comes down to the lighting and the weather and particle effects. There's bugs and birds chirping through the wind while it kicks up the dust and leaves, and you see grasshoppers and bees and butterflies fly through the camera view. There's just so much going on that the world feels alive in a way I haven't felt in a lot of games recently. I was playing with full ray tracing and a mixture of very high and ultra high settings, averaging at about 60 to 65 FPS on my 4070 Ti Super at 1440p. But here's the cool thing, when you set DLSS to quality, the default resolution from which it upscales is set to 44% of your actual resolution. But you can change it to a custom value, which is so fucking convenient. Using DLAA at native 100% resolution caused my frame rate to dip down into the 40s pretty frequently. So I changed it to DLSS quality and set the upscaling resolution to 75%, which gave me a near similar image quality and much better frame rate. Seriously, hats off to Ubisoft for doing that. But back to the open world. You really start to see how amazing it is when it gets windy or the rain starts pouring down on you with lightning and thunder far in the sky. And the changing seasons just make it even better. The hazy spring mornings are serene and peaceful. The sunny afternoons in the summer bring out all the color in the world. The windy fall evenings kick up the fallen leaves in your face, and the frozen water bodies in the winter make it hard for you to sprint. Not to mention the sheer amount of rain and snow you get to see on the screen. Walking around, you'll see kids catching a performance, people paying their respects at temples, someone playing music in the streets, and so much more. I kid you not, Assassin's Creed Shadows is the first Ubisoft game I played where I didn't want to use the fast travel at all. That is, for the first 25 hours. Then the charm begins to wear off and the cracks start to show. With Ubisoft, it's always been one step forward, 2 steps back, and Shadows is no exception to that rule. While the open world looks breathtakingly gorgeous, the overall world design and exploration still feels like it's stuck in 2018. One thing that made Valhalla's open world so compelling was the world events. These world events could be anything and you never knew what to expect. You could run into a man sitting with an axe jammed in his head, or another one who yeets himself off a cliff to get to Valhalla. And these weren't even the most ridiculous ones. Shadows doesn't have any of that. Instead, a lot of side quests in Assassin's Creed Shadows end up turning into kill these people or assassinate those people, and that's it. There are multiple different groups that you have to eliminate. Your final upgrades in the skill trees are locked behind these assassinations, but other than that, they just feel like unnecessary padding. A major problem with the open world is that the field of view just straight up sucks. It's too narrow, especially when you're playing as Yasuke. I mean, the man is big as a bear already. Look at how tight the FOV is, and this is me playing with it at maximum value. It doesn't matter how amazing your world looks, I don't think you can really enjoy it like this. And it's not like Ubisoft doesn't know how to do that, because you get a really nice panoramic view of the world at every synchronization point. Another example of this is the fact that they've removed the autofollow option for objectives and map markers while riding the horse. Instead, there's this ugly pathfinding line that you can manually follow all the way. Now, this was a feature that was already there in the older Assassin's Creed games, so it boggles my mind as to why they would remove this. What makes it funnier is that there's an autofollow option where you can follow an NPC during quests. So, what's the reasoning behind this? And trust me, Ubisoft has tried to make the game more cinematic and immersive. Pressing R3 twice gets rid of your HUD, and running or riding through the world during intense weather makes it look like a movie. But it seems like most of their efforts to make it cinematic have gone to the wrong place. For example, almost every NPC conversation happens in a cutscene, no matter how small or pointless it is. Like talking to a random NPC on the side of the road can trigger a cutscene, and each and every cutscene, no matter if it's related to the story or not, is 30 FPS. And it gets worse because the quality of these cutscenes is very, very inconsistent, often looking worse than the gameplay. To be fair, some of them look phenomenal and have a very strong dramatic flair to them, but there are others that are just as bad with lifeless expressions that made me go like, is this what we expect from a AAA game now?
Come on!
And equally inconsistent is the quality of the English voice acting. There are scenes that are really well done and they hit heavy and breathe life into the story, but there are a lot of them that are just so flat that they kind of ruin the experience. It's like the team was so focused on getting the Japanese accents, they didn't really focus on voice direction a lot. And it's not just during the scenes where the conversations are formal, because that makes sense. The quality is definitely there, it's just not very consistent. There's also stuff that people might enjoy, but I feel like it doesn't really make a difference, like the hideout. You can add different structures to the hideout, like a blacksmith to upgrade weapons or a dojo for allies who you can then call for help in combat. These structures can be customized and upgraded, and I'm sure some people will love it for what it is, but to me, it would have made more sense to refine exploration mechanics rather than managing a hideout. On the plus side, you can keep pets at the hideout, so it's not all bad. Petting random dogs and cats on the streets will unlock them as pets, and then you can add them to the hideout. Another funny thing is that the game has a pop-up telling you not to climb on the torii gates, but there are no consequences for doing so. A nice touch would have been to put on the wanted status, like you get if somebody rings the alarm while you're infiltrating a camp. Again, like with other things, the mechanics are in place, but the implementation leaves a lot to be desired. Then there are the usual issues, like the horse controls are completely dogshit. On one occasion, I also got stuck in this cave. Now mind you, I'm not trying to break the game. This is a place where only Yasuke can go, and I came through this exact same tunnel 5 seconds ago. But still, the game wouldn't let me go back through the same way. You get my point. And while we're talking about Yasuke, we kinda have to address the... For everyone who's been throwing a fit all this time with stuff like, why is the black man the main character in my Japanese game? Let me put your mind at ease. Yasuke is not the main character. He's the secondary protagonist in a supporting role. Naoe, the Japanese character, is the main character. She has the hidden blade, she has the eagle vision, she is the assassin in the Assassin's Creed game. I won't go into story spoilers, but let me just tell you this. After the intro, you spend the first 15 hours playing as Naoe. Even after that, you can choose to play almost the entire game as Naoe. There are very few quests that require you to play as Yasuke. In fact, out of the 50 hours it took me to finish Shadows, maybe less than 8 hours were spent playing as Yasuke. And for those clutching their pearls and bringing this meme back again, let me put your mind at ease too. Ubisoft did not remove the crossbow for historical accuracy. They removed it because it broke the game and made it too easy. With that said, if you weren't a fan of all the mythological stuff that Ubisoft has been adding into Assassin's Creed lately, you'll be happy to know that the story in Shadows is incredibly grounded. The story itself is fine, but it has some really cool parts that showcase the internal struggles and power plays of the different clans of feudal Japan. Backstabbing, political intrigue, unsavory partnerships, unexpected allies, there's a lot of this going on between the parties involved. It also shows how some groups are thriving while the others barely scrape by, and the use and abuse of power to control people. One of the themes revolves around how anyone can be a monster in someone else's story, and elements of reverence, honor, and balance play a major role as well. And the game also deals with the cycle of revenge and letting go. You'll also see some historical figures, including Oda Nobunaga, Hattori Hanzo, and Lady Oichi. Again, I won't go into more details regarding all the characters involved, but the story does a good job of creating interesting situations involving these historical characters. There's also a lot of bonding and light-hearted moments with your allies, which add some nice flavor, shedding light on different characters' motivations and background, like Junjiro, who thinks of Naoe as a sister or Tomiko, who's very suspicious of samurai, including Yasuke. Now let me rant a bit about my personal issues with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Since the franchise became open world, people have argued that they're not really Assassin's Creed games anymore. And for the longest time, I've argued against that because the Animus still played a major role. The modern day timeline still existed, and Templars and Assassins were still the central element, though in a different form. After Shadows, I can no longer defend that statement. The Assassin and Templar part in the story is so little, and in my opinion, so insignificant, that it might as well not have been there. To me, it seems like whatever stuff is there exists only so they can continue to use the Assassin's Creed brand name. And I won't spoil it for anyone, but personally, I found the ending to the main story extremely disappointing. My first reaction as I saw the credits roll was,
my disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
I thought it was abrupt, it didn't make a whole lot of sense, and Ubisoft either cut some content or is just setting up the DLC. And it wasn't just the ending either. The game starts with a Call of Duty type launcher, which lets you access different Assassin's Creed games. And my first impression as soon as I saw that screen, come on! And it continued because there's no modern day protagonist. There are a few rifts in the world which have something to do with the story, but they don't add anything interesting. But the stupidest thing is that Animus anomalies have mostly been relegated to a system that pretty much looks like a battle pass. It's called Shadows Project. Stabilizing anomalies in the world gives you XP, which you can then redeem in this project screen for gear and premium currency. It all seems like such a wasted opportunity because Valhalla ended with probably what could have been the best protagonist we could ask for going forward. With Basim, we had a guy who was the reincarnation of a Norse god and manipulated his way through the story, pretty much killed the modern timeline's protagonist, and broke out of the Animus simulation into the modern day timeline. This was probably the best thing Ubisoft has ever written, because it's the kind of writing I would expect from maybe a Remedy game, but never Ubisoft. Mirage was a much smaller game and focused on Basim's past, so I gave that a pass. But let's face it, the Animus added heavier stakes to the story, because the Templars and Assassins were still fighting in the modern world, outside the simulation. Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood and Revelations, which to this date are regarded as some of the best Assassin's Creed games, they weren't just about Ezio, they were about Ezio and Desmond Miles. The trilogy with Layla Hassan had a rough start, but it gave us the best ending I've ever seen in a Ubisoft game. So if they're going to sideline the Animus and the Isu and the modern day stuff, they might as well just not call it Assassin's Creed anymore. Because for me, that was the heart of Assassin's Creed. That is what set it apart from other games. Otherwise, the new ones pretty much play like any other open world games with RPG elements. But then again, that's just one man's opinion. Even with all the issues I have with Assassin's Creed Shadows, it still has a lot to offer. The sights of feudal Japan have been rendered beautifully, it makes a lot of improvements over previous Assassin's Creed games, and it really does show the best of Ubisoft in a lot of ways. You can clearly see the vision, but sadly, you can also see an unwillingness to commit to the vision. With all the tech improvements and graphics, we're slowly getting to a point where simply having a great looking world won't be enough, and Ubisoft seems like it has a lot of catching up to do. When you have a 50 to 100 hour long game, visuals will only carry you so far before it starts to get boring. And that's nothing to say about Ubisoft's egregious business practices like pushing subs over sales and frankly, some really weird stuff that seems to pop up every other day. There's a scene where someone talks to Naoe about selling your spirit for the promise of prosperity, and that's exactly what I feel like Ubisoft has done to this series. But don't let my personal disappointment with the game ruin it for you. People have wanted an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan for a long time, and with all the stuff they've improved, I'm really glad Ubisoft waited until now to make it. If you enjoyed the world design and gameplay of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, this is a much improved version of that. It's also a much needed upgrade over Valhalla's combat and skill system, and probably the most polished Assassin's Creed game I've ever played. So if all that sounds good to you, you'll love this game. But if you're anything like me and you're looking for the narrative twists and the modern day shenanigans like we still had in Valhalla, you might find yourself disappointed. So at best, I would recommend that, you check it out during the sale.